Hello and welcome to beautiful Crystal Cove State Park. My name is Ranger Winter, and although my name is Winter, spring is truly my favorite season. Symbolically, spring represents renewal, rebirth, regrowth, and for some wildlife, it also means romance. Spring is the time of year when animals tend to be twitter-pated or looking for love. Most mammals will breed and give live birth. Many birds lay their eggs and then hunker down in their nest after some pretty spectacular courtship rituals. And for animals that hibernate, like our park mascot, Flazy, the desert tortoise, they wake up from their slumber. Spring is the time of year when there are sonorous sounds like the ribbit, ribbit from a Pacific tree frog or the Chicago, Chicago from the California quail, as well as the season for tantalizing smells from Skittle-colored wildflowers. As one of the world's biodiversity hotspots, California has a cornucopia of native plant species, including a dazzling variety of annual spring blooms. These wildflowers bloom for a limited time. During their heyday, it's as if nothing else in the world matters. After their seasonal life cycle ends, they go to seed and stay dormant during the hot and dry summer. But when those winter rains come, we know it'll be just a short while until the seeds pop again and wildflowers bloom gloriously once more. Here at Crystal Cove, brilliant wildflowers are blooming in all colors of the rainbow. On the spectrum from red to orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple, I'm going to show just one example to represent all these colors. We'll start at the top of the arch with the red California fuchsia. Hummingbirds love this brightly colored flower since they can easily maneuver their long beaks and long tongues into the tubular flowers. Hummingbirds may rely on the fuchsia for its delicious nectar, but the fuchsia also depends on hummingbirds to pollinate it, so it's a reciprocal or symbiotic relationship. This lovely red wildflower will bloom in early summer when a lot of the spring colors are fading away. So, when the peak of the season wanes, we know we have something colorful and bright to look forward to. Next up are the radiant orange flowers of the California poppy, which unfold in the morning sunlight and close up at night or in cold wind or in the shade. With enough rain, fields of poppies will carpet our wilderness areas, hosting poppy parties and bringing vivid blankets of color through the spring and into summer. Also known as the flame flower, these silky four-petaled flowers are solitary on long stems and grow wild throughout the state. California Poppy Day is celebrated annually on April 6 when vast fields seem to come alive in neon orange. There are lots of yellow wildflowers, but the bodacious branches of the bush sunflower brighten this park each year. The yellow petals attract many pollinating insects, especially butterflies and native bees, and the seeds provide food for birds like the lesser goldfinch. I call this the s'more plant because if you breathe deeply into the center of the flower, the aroma resembles chocolate raspberry. This is the perfect time of year to draw these sunflowers because they are what we call seasonally dimorphic. And right now, after the winter rains, the leaves are large, but as the temperature heats up, they'll be replaced by much smaller leaves during the drought conditions of summer and fall. Since I couldn't find a local plant with green flowers, I decided on wild cucumber, which actually has small white flowers but a big, distinctive, spiky green fruit. Inside the cucumber are up to 16 shiny brown seeds about the size of a penny. Sometimes the mature fruit pops open with such force it makes a loud sound that can be heard for a long ways away, and it then ejects these seeds into the air. The common name for wild cucumber is manroot because the underground tuber is said to resemble a man in a fetal position. When you think about wildflowers, you don't usually envision blue flowers. Well, we have a lovely spring bloomer called baby blue eyes to represent the blue in the rainbow spectrum. These pretty 5-petaled bowl-shaped flowers with white centers can be a pastel blue or a much deeper, darker color. It has a short blooming period, only from March to June, but that's just enough for the caterpillars, butterflies, moths, and even bats who are attracted to the wildflower and serve as pollinators. If Perry's Phacelia is blooming, you just can't miss it. The deep purple, we're calling it indigo, like in the rainbow, make this plant easy to spot through its range from March to May. So right now is a great time to stroll along Morrow Canyon. And if you spot it, make sure to be on the lookout for bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds, because to them, it's not just about the color, but because the sweet nectar inside is an ambrosia, or nectar of the gods. The bell-shaped petals are arranged kind of like a pinwheel, and since Perry's Phacelia can survive in areas without a lot of rainfall, our Southern California landscape makes a perfect habitat for it to grow. Finally, for our violet ambassador and representing the final layer of the rainbow arch, we find wild hyacinth, one of the first native spring flowers that blooms when the weather changes. Many wildflowers attract insects and hummingbirds, but this single-stemmed beauty with a puffball of petals also attracts herbivores like deer and rabbit who feed on the nutritious corm, an underground storage system of sorts that resembles an onion. So that's the color spectrum for you, and now you have the opportunity to draw these enchanting and wonderful wildflowers in all colors of the rainbow that can be found in the open spaces and trails and hillsides of Laguna Beach or right here at Crystal Cove State Park. Have fun!
I'm Elizabeth McGhee and I'm with LOCA Arts Education, and today we're going to be doing a pastel drawing on sandpaper. So you will need some soft pastels, so they're the chalky pastels, not like oil pastels, some sandpaper, so you can just get it at the hardware store. I like to tape it down to a piece of cardboard so that it doesn't curl up like that. I like to also have some blank paper just to practice on first. And then, of course, for taping this on, you're going to need tape. Pencil, again, for sketching. And then I like to have some dry paper towels and then one kind of damp paper towel because the chalk pastels are a little messy. You can also use a wet wipe, just something to clean your fingers with. So before I start drawing on the sandpaper, we're just going to sketch out some flowers and how to draw them and how to simplify them. If you draw a circle, little wonky, but still works. Circle. So if the circle's disappearing in space, it makes an oval. So it's going to be more like this shape. So you can kind of think of it as, you know, when you're looking down the street and you see like the lid of a sewer, right? So it's circle, but when you look at it in space on the ground, it's an oval shape. So flowers do that too, because a lot of flowers are circles, but they're like a disc, so it's flat, so they're going to make an oval. So here I am drawing a simple daisy, and this is how it would look if you were looking straight at it. It's facing you, or you were looking straight down at it. But if the daisy is pointing up and you're looking at it sideways, I'm just going to draw that handy dandy oval, and if we find the middle of the oval, that's going to be that center part of the daisy, and it's going, if it was perfectly flat, and didn't have curled petals, it would kind of look like that, where those center petals look super tiny and the side petals look really long. And that's part of perspective. But most flowers aren't perfectly flat like that unless you've pressed them in a book or something. So they're going to have some depth to them. So if I still draw that oval, just to kind of give you an idea, find the middle, so it's in the middle halfway, so I can kind of imagine it like that. Draw the center, but now I'm going to draw it with some petals that are kind of poking up and some are poking down. So I'm just going to make them a little more wavy, still kind of staying within that main shape. Maybe this one is poking down, maybe this one is kind of wonky. And so that's how you kind of can see that flower shape in space going back. Now, maybe you've drawn like a simple drawing of a tulip before, you know, where you start with an U shape and a little zigzag at the top. That's a very useful shape for looking at cup-type flowers. If we were to look at this flower from straight down, which we don't really draw them that way, they would look very different with the little parts of the flower in here. So you can use this cup shape for doing California poppy flowers and other cup-shaped flowers, and you can use this disc shape for doing daisies or sunflowers, kind of in those shapes. So now that we kind of have an idea of how we're going to draw our flowers, we're going to go to the sandpaper. We're going to start doing our landscape, and you'll see that I have a little plastic baggie. That's because chalk pastels are a little messy, so what I'm going to be doing every so often while I'm working is just getting my sandpaper and just kind of tapping off the excess pastel inside the bag, just so it doesn't make a mess everywhere. And so like before, I have my sandpaper taped down so it's not going to curl or move on me, and it actually has a nice border so I know my fingers aren't going to be getting dirty touching the edges. So what I'm going to start with first is the blue of the sky, but I'm going to use the blue of the sky to actually draw some hills. So it's just going to be some simple wavy hills. And before I start going on with a lot of blue, I'm actually going to get some white. So with pastel, you can mix on whatever you're working on, whether it's paper or sandpaper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add white onto here. And just going to kind of go almost all the way across. It doesn't need to be perfect. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it, when I put the blue on here, it's going to get lighter as it gets closer to the mountains. So there's a very complicated thing in landscape drawing and painting that's called atmospheric perspective. So just like how we looked at the perspective of the flowers going back in space, there's also a perspective of colors, which is kind of interesting to think about. It's why mountains are purple when you look at them in the distance. So it's not that the mountains are purple, it's that the atmosphere or the air around us isn't perfectly clear. There's things in it, like dust. And so what it does is it catches and reflects light. So the blue of the sky ends up kind of going over the color of the mountains, and it makes that purpley color. It's kind of the same way that when you look at something very, very far away, it looks lighter than what is closer to us, generally. But another rule of that atmospheric perspective is there's less color when things are further away. It's almost more muted, I would say. So more vibrant color close to us and more muted further away. And that's what's going to help make your landscape look like there's miles and miles behind it. All right, so now that I have that white on there, I'm going to go in with my blue. It's the same blue I used before. And I can kind of just start blending into that white a little bit. I'm not going to go all the way down, but I am going to let that white powder that's sitting on the surface blend in. And so there's like a lot of chalk dust building up here, but I'm not going to do anything about it right now because I'm going to use it when I blend. This is probably not a project you want to do if you're in a windy area because all of that colorful chalk dust will blow away. All right, so now that I have it mostly covered, this is the messy part. So I'm going to start in the white area, and I'm just gently going to smear the white, kind of pressing it down so it fills in any extra areas I didn't fill in. And now that I have that filled, I can start swirling where the white meets the blue. And I like to be gentle at first and kind of work my way up to being more aggressive. But this is what's filling in any of those gaps that I didn't get with the pastel. All right, so you can kind of see all this extra chalk on here and my messy fingers. So that's where the damp paper towel comes in handy because you can wipe that off. So I'm just gonna kind of get this in the bag. All right, so now we kind of got our sky laid in. Next, we're gonna do the mountains. So my set does not have a light purple. If it did, my life would be easier, but we can still make it work. So I just have a dark purple. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line of where I want the mountains to kind of end. Kind of like that. Well, let's make it a little more even, maybe. That's good. So I'm just not going to press hard. I'm just going to kind of lay down some purple because what I'm going to do is the same way we had white. I'm going to use white to kind of blend with this purple. Maybe even use a bit of gray. All right, so that looks like enough purple to kind of give my mountains a purple tint. And so we'll go in with some gray. And I'm just going to do little swirls, and what that does is it blends in with the purple. And not going to add too much, just enough to get it going. And with the gray on there, I might add a little bit of white to lighten it up so they don't look as dark. So again, I'm going to still blend with my finger. This is just going to lighten it a little bit. And I'm going to kind of go right up to that line. Yeah, I might even add some more white because that's still a little too vibrant for me. But it can be whatever you want. This is just for me. Much better. I like that better. So when things are very colorful, they're called high chroma. And when things have lots of darks and lots of lights, that's called high contrast. So when we're far away, we want low chroma, low contrast. So now I'm going to pick my duller green because again, we want our field to be, we're starting from the furthest away and working our way forward. So I'm just going to put in this dull green all the way up to the mountains. And we're not worrying about where our flowers are yet. We're going to put those on top of all the green. That's a good amount of that. Then maybe I'll add a little bit of this brighter green. And I'm not really doing even stripes, it's just kind of random. And then maybe I'll add some of this really bright yellow green closest to it. And I can kind of blend it into that darker green if I want. And it'll make like a new color. Just gently blending. And where it meets the purple, I don't mind if the purple gets into it a little bit because that will make things look very soft and very out of focus and also far away. So it's these kind of optical tricks that will give your art depth. And I'm just letting each color flow into each other. Also, a trash bag works good for this too. Okay, so now we have a kind of nice base for our landscape. So we can start adding our flowers. So what I might want to start with first are those, remember the oval flowers? So like the sunflowers and the daisies. So I'm just going to do an oval of yellow. Maybe, and as things get further away, they're going to be even tinier. So it'll be a smaller oval really far away, and it can be a bigger oval close up. Now for doing those petals, remember how they're kind of wonky. They're not perfect. It's nature. So I'm just going to have, mess up those ovals. I just like to start with the oval. And you can use like the corner of your pastel to do really tiny ones. And one of the hardest things to do is to do random. Our brains are wired to make things evenly spaced, to see patterns. And so nature does whatever it wants. So it's going to be random. So there's going to be like little clusters of yellow over here, maybe no yellow over there, some little ones there. So trying to make things almost, think of stars and constellations, how they're just in a variety of places. All right, and that's kind of a good start for my yellows. And in the center of each of these yellows, I might want to use a little bit of black for these close-up flowers, just to do that center bit. I always like to do the center last, because otherwise when you put the yellow next to it, it just blends and makes a mess. And on top of each of those centers, I'm also going to put brown, just so that it's a little different. And for doing, like, let's say a poppy, we'll start with a nice orangey color, and it's a cup shape, right? So I'm using the corner. So I'm making the part of the cup here. Don't mind this extra dust. When I knock it off, it'll come off. And then the inside is going to be catching some light, so it's going to be a slightly lighter orange. So that's just kind of indicating the flower. And then when we want to do the stem, we can kind of indicate the stem or some extra leaves. But now I'm just going to work my way around adding more flowers. And we can even add clumps of like some of the purple flowers. So the same way we did the purple mountain, starting with the purple, I might do some little balls of that dark purple, and then add just lightly some white on top, so that it'll make kind of a lighter purple. We can always restate. So by not focusing on drawing individual flowers, but flowers in a wider scene, that's how we're going to be able to make it look like a beautiful wildflower scene. So I'm going to poke around, add a few more of these cup-shaped flowers, and again, they're going to get so tiny further away, and their marks are going to be more up and down, while the sunflowers are more sideways to indicate that oval. So it's just a few little tick marks here and there. Again, bigger as they get closer, and quite large. We can have individual petals when it's very close. With that lighter color. And for even some of the grasses, we can add in with the lighter green over the darker color. And again, they're going to get tinier and tinier till when we get in the far distance, they're just going to be little dots. And just like before, how I said there was more contrast closer up, right now we have lots of light but not a lot of dark. So I'm going to start to add some more contrast, so there'll be also some streaks of up and down of this darker green. And my grasses are bigger as I get to the bottom. So you can add as many or as few flowers as you want. This is just kind of a stepping off point. I just find sandpaper is like a really underutilized material, and it's just really great for pastel because it makes things so soft, and you don't have any white poking through because you have the color of the sandpaper too. So, have fun and explore drawing nature, and here are your wildflowers.